Hello and welcome to Vector Tuts Plus. I'm Martin Perhiniak, and today I'm going to show you how to work with columns in InDesign. Columns can improve your typography greatly, especially if you use all the features that's available in InDesign. So first of all, how to set up columns for a story or a text frame. The way you can do it, the most easiest way, is to select the text frame itself and then press Command or Control B to go to the text frame options. And here you can specify the number of columns that you want to see. Now in this dialog box, you have the preview option, which should be turned on, because then you can see all your changes live while you still have the dialog box open. So if I increase the number of columns, you can already see it, the way it updates on the right, and we can add as many columns as we want. Whenever we have columns, we also have the empty space between the columns, which is called gutter. Now you can change this gutter here, but to be able to see these changes, I'm going to just click on OK for now, press W to see the non-printing elements like the gutter as well between the two columns. If I zoom a little bit closer, you can see this well. So this empty space here is called the gutter. If I have this text frame selected again and we go back to the text frame options, I can increase that gutter and then you can see the way it expands, or I can decrease it. I'm going to keep it 5 millimeters. Another option which can be useful is to change the width of your columns. Let's see what happens if we start changing that. As you can see, the text frame will be expanding. Because we have a set amount of a number for the columns, which is 2, we also have the gutter set. So the only way InDesign can increase the width of these columns is to increase the whole text frame. And in this case, it obviously only expands the width of the text frame. But you have another option for changing the size of the columns by changing these values here. Instead of having fixed number, you can have fixed width, which is the opposite. So if we have fixed width, then whenever we change the number of columns, InDesign will have to add the same width for each column. So if I increase the number of the columns, you can see we don't have enough tags to fill this all in, but you can see that the size of the columns or the width of the columns will be always exactly the same. In some cases, this can be also very useful. Let me change back the option to fixed number. I set it to 2, and I can set the gutter back to 5, and maybe I set the width back to 87. I think that was the original size. Let me click on OK and zoom closer to another part of the text. Here, in this case, we have two problems with this text. First of all, we have orphans. Orphans are lines which are separated from the other part of the paragraph, and they are either on the last line or the first line of a column. And you can see an orphan here, an orphan, and another one here. If you want to get rid of these, you can use a feature called Keep, and you can find this under the paragraph options, Keep options, or use the keyboard shortcut Command-Alt-K or Control-Alt-K. So if I click on this, we can again have the preview option on, so we can see all the changes live. And if I choose Keep lines together, then InDesign will automatically sort this problem out. So as you can see, this orphan will be automatically set to the next column, and this orphan is also automatically sorted because now we have 2 lines here. So that works out really well. But how can we equalize these columns? Because as you can see, the first column is much shorter than the second one, and then the third one is again shorter. So again, something we can do from the text frame options. Here we have an option called balance columns. So when balance columns is turned on, then InDesign will try to sort out the columns and make sure their length is the same. So it doesn't change the text frame itself. The frame stays where it was, but just realigns the text in the 3 columns in this case. Now, of course, it also depends on the number of lines you have, because if you have a number which can't be divided into 3, so the number of lines can't be divided into 3, then there still will be a little bit of difference between the number of lines in each column, like in this case. But most of the cases, it still helps a lot using the balance columns option. Let me show you another great feature for columns, and this is something that you can find in a panel called Story. If you go to the window menu, under Type and Tables, you will find this panel, and the Story option is only available if you have text selected. Once you have the text selected, here in the Story panel, you have an option called Optical Margin Alignment. Now, when do we need this option? First of all, I would like to make sure that you can see we have in these columns hyphens. And the best to see in this option is when we have the justified alignment on our paragraphs. So I'm going to select all the text from this text frame and press Command or Control Shift J to justify the text. If I zoom closer, you can see whenever we have hyphens or special characters, these are all included inside the text frame or inside a column. Now this is useful, but this looks actually better if all these hyphens are outside of the frame, so they actually are hanging outside of the frame or the column. And this is called Optical Margin Alignment, or as it used to be called, a Roman hanging punctuation. This is something we can do by just simply turning this option on. If I have it turned on, you can see all these hyphens will be aligned outside of the frame. Very useful feature, and already the whole column will look much more organized. So let me just show it again without it and with this feature. So it's just a minor change, but it can help to improve the text a lot. Another feature which I like to use with columns is called span and split columns. And that is especially useful when you have a big text frame and there's a part of the story which you would like to make sure it spans across both of your columns or whatever number of columns you have. In that case, you can select a part of your story, and then from the paragraph formatting controls, either from the control panel or from the paragraph drop down, you can choose the span columns feature. I prefer to use the control bar, and from here I can choose span all, or I can also decide how many columns do I want to span this text, select this text. I'm going to choose select or span all, and you can see now this part of the story is still in the 2-column text frame, but now it spans across the 2 columns. That is a very useful feature. And we can also do a similar feature, but instead of spanning, we can create a second column like an embedded column inside another column using the split option. So I'm going to select this part here, the bulleted list, and I'm going to set this to split to 2. And this will only be visible if my text frame is smaller. So now you can see, again, there's 2 columns here. Let me just show you once again. If I extend this, you can see it's in one column. But if there's not enough space, then it automatically switches to 2 embedded columns or split column inside one column. And once again, all you need to do is just to make sure that the text, whatever you want to split or span, is selected, and then you use these features from the control panel. If you want a bit more options for this, remember you can go to the paragraph panel and choose span columns, and here you can define even more options for this. So you can specify the number of sub columns, so you can set it to 3 or 4 or whatever you want to set up, and then you can even specify the space before the split or space after the split, and you can also specify the gutter for the split columns. So these were the features that I wanted to show you about working with columns in InDesign. I hope you found it useful, and I hope you will join me next time as well here on Vector Tuts Plus. Thanks a lot for your attention.